Now on the phone line, we welcome in from the Mirius Group of Ameriprise Financial Advisors, Phil McCoy. Phil, how are you?
I am living a dream. Colin, how are you guys?
We're doing
great.
fine, yeah.
Before we get into stuff, I want to poll the hosts here, and including you, Phil. Given the opportunity, when you were, say, 16 years old, given the opportunity to go abroad to study, all else being equal, you could afford to do it, and all that, would you have done it?
Phil McCoy at 16 would not have done it because I was, like most 16-year-old boys, my brain wasn't completely developed. I probably wouldn't have recognized the chance. Now that I'm grown up, I would yell back at the 16-year-old and say, yes, you should do that. So I would say a more mature me would say yes, but at 16, I was not mature enough to realize what kind of opportunity that would be.
And I think I would have, John, for the simple reason that my folks carried the family on trips every year, so I had an experience of looking what was on the other side of the mountain, if you will, and I always enjoyed it. I think I probably would have extended it when I was 16 years of age.
Colin, you're closer to it than anybody.
And for me, I was kind of in a situation as what Richie was talking about, was that for my family, they brought the world to us. We did a lot of traveling. I've been to many different countries because of that. And also, once I graduated college, my sisters were still in high school. My family actually decided to host a foreign exchange student from Spain for a year. So Anna was a great member of our family that I still try to keep in touch to from time to time, but they did that for 1 year, and then I know other families that have had multiple foreign exchange students, and each and every one of them were great from all over. I've met kids from Brazil, South Korea, Spain. I'm trying to remember where else they were from. I can't remember if there was, I believe, one from Germany as well. So yeah, I would 100% recommend it. As for myself, I don't know if I would have done it, just because, as I said, I did enough traveling either in the U.S. or throughout the world with my family to where I don't know if I wanted to do it just for a full year on my own.
I don't think I would have. I would have been afraid. Just to leave everything behind, leave friends, leave my bubble. At that age, I don't think I would have been ready to do it. So, anyway, does anybody want to talk sports ball, Phil?
I don't think he does. They lost.
Oh, yes, we do, Phil. That's what happened last night.
I do, and I don't, and I wish Rob was here to complain with me. But I kind of knew that was. I didn't know. I had a feeling that they were going to have a disappointing performance last night. I was surprised at how it happened. The offense was atrocious. I think the defense played well. It was more of the Steelers of 3, 4, 5 years ago. But having said that, by the time I think it was 22-3 or something, I had already realized that they don't pay my bills, and I'm going to bed. So I'm already over it. And I do feel, I was telling Colin, I'm a known Washington Commanders hater, but I have to admit, the way that their season's gone and how bad these last few weeks have been, I do feel for them. I didn't want to see it be this bad. I kind of wanted them to be just slightly below playoff contention, and so I can torture my friend about that. I didn't want to see it this bad as what it has been for those poor Washington football team and the injuries and so forth.
But with the Commanders, everybody talks about Daniels, the quarterback, but that's not what cost them the game yesterday. The offense did not play very well, but their defense was awful. Atrocious, absolutely atrocious.
Yeah, defense was bad.
Coordinator's got to go. Joe Witt needs fired. It's been 4 weeks of losing by 3+ touchdowns. It's embarrassing.
But when the other team, I think 6 possessions, 6 scores, or maybe 5 possessions, 5 scores in NFL, that should not happen. Shouldn't happen.
They scored on their first 8.
I'm sorry? 8.
8.
Okay.
First 8 possessions. Yeah. They scored every single time.
Pretty bad.
Well, yeah. It wasn't a good sports day. It was a good sports weekend. Shepherd Rams got another win. I think that was, yes, they did. They've been on a run, and good for them. I wish they had a shot at the playoffs because I think they could cause some damage. And Shepherd volleyball went undefeated over the weekend. So great day for Shepherd sports, which is way more important to me than a little sorry Pittsburgh Steelers. So,
yeah. Phil, over the weekend, I saw an interesting, or heard an interesting discussion about our economy, and that at this point in time, we're the third highest on record, maybe relative GDP, whatever it is. But anyway, only the Great Depression of 1929, the dot-com bubble in the late 1990s, early 2000s, and now the height of the stock market currently, and they made the analogies that is all driven by artificial intelligence. But they made an interesting, and that's something I think we've all known, but they made another interesting observation that if anything will curb the growth of artificial intelligence before we have the burst of the bubble, it's the lack of adequate number of data centers. Data centers, we hear them kind of thrown around with disgust locally and other places, but that evidently is the inhibiting force with artificial intelligence. Your comments?
As far as, and it sounds like we're going down the road of talking, which I would agree with. It's a fear of a skinny top or a frothy market, and it's driven by one simple thing. As we've discussed in the past, I don't think that it is driven solely by artificial intelligence. I would say that it's driven mainly by artificial intelligence. Where I find comfort in the current market where we are right now currently, even though last week was a rough week, where I find comfort is in corporate earnings. And we'll always revert back to corporate earnings. And when you look at corporate earnings, companies are making money and they are being profitable. I would look at the data centers, the lack of data, not necessarily lack of, but the inability to keep up with the demand for artificial intelligence. I would look at that as a headwind opposed to something that would just burst the bubble. But we do get, and it is a legitimate fear, and I, deep down in my belly, I always have these fears as well, that the higher our markets go, the harder the fall is going to be. And then we start to look back at 2008, 2009. You look at in the 20s, the Great Recession, and we look at 1989, all these terrible market performances, and the technical analysis, which, by the way, we don't necessarily fully buy into technical analysis, but when we say, hey, the last time that we had a major pullback, this is what our markets look like. I think the difference is as we wrap up this earnings season, that companies, not just artificial intelligence driven companies, artificial intelligence is assisted, but these companies have been profitable. I would agree that, at some point we're going to have a fall. I think that's common sense. It's not a major statement that I'm making, but because we experience those as part of a healthy market. How far the fall will go is what the concern is, and we'll never know that. There's headwinds out there that we're not aware of yet. But I wouldn't say the inability for us to keep up with data centers would be what pops that bubble. I don't know that I would agree with that. It may slow the bubble. It may slow the growth, but not pop the bubble.
No, I think that's exactly right. I may have misstated. They were talking about slowing the growth. They said the bubble would burst somewhere down the line, but will be delayed somewhat because of the inadequate number of data centers.
Yeah, and honestly, if you really think about the inadequate number of data centers, it may keep that bubble from getting too big. So if we're going to, if we refer to it as a bubble, skinny top, frothy, whatever adjective that we use, well, the natural inability for that growth to occur because of data centers, or the pushback from data centers could kind of minimize that to some extent. But regardless of what's driving the markets, that's a very natural fear because we've been through it before. We've been there, done that. I'm fearful of getting the flu because I've had the flu before and I know what it feels like. So those of us that have been through those market performances, especially investors that are nearing or in retirement, they've been there, done that before, and that fear is legitimate. it's there. That's where we would encourage people to have a diversified portfolio. Maybe you're not enjoying the same exact growth that the NASDAQ is, or QQQ, or a handful of these companies, but at the same time, because of that, you're protected against some of that fall when it happens. Not if and when it happens. When it happens, you're protected against some of that, so you're not being injured as bad as the overall market, because you weren't just in technology or artificial intelligence driven companies.
Let's stay on artificial intelligence for just another minute, if we can, Phil. We think of artificial intelligence being a investment opportunity in areas of development, data centers and the like. But there's another one that's emerging that I think is growing a lot of attention, and that's the underwater cables, which are capable of transmitting massive amount of data between various countries, the Americas and the European countries, for example. And I think this particular niche is supposed to really blossom in the next 4 or 5 years. You have any real knowledge of the expanse of this opportunity?
No, other than, if you look at, we talk a lot about global economics and a kind of a one world system, if you will, as far as economies are concerned, because we do have so much impact on that. That just enhances that's going to give us, I have heard of it, but it gives us the ability to have a global technology where we can even monitor each other more appropriately, and that's kind of where we're looking at it. So, we've got these fears or concerns with China and other countries that maybe we don't want to have some of our intellect in that regard. But some of that may also help us monitor that, knowing exactly what their capabilities are.
I always get concerned when we talk about the imminent crash that is coming, and there's always an imminent crash. Imminent being somewhere between 30 minutes from now and 6 years from now. It's the nature of markets, and they always come back. They always come back. That's kind of the mantra. And there's a article in the Wall Street Journal this morning that feeling great about the economy, ? You must own stocks. And I wonder if the fear of the imminent fall keeps people who have money, who have just gotten their first job, have the opportunity for a 401k, or just have some extra cash, if it makes them put it in their pillow rather than investing into the market at all as the market gets higher and higher, because they're waiting for that crash. Because the day after I put the money in the market, that's when the crash is going to happen. That's kind of the feeling.
Yes, and you get a lot of that even internally with us here in our office, and sometimes we speak with forked tongue when it comes to throwing money into the market at a period like right now, because as always, and this has nothing to do with artificial intelligence, where we currently are, where our economy is, we know that there's a fall coming. I don't want to define it as a crash, because each person may define a crash separately. Even, there's a lot of people that would have defined last week as a crash. Last week was nothing. We were down like 3% on the NASDAQ, 1.5% on the S&P. But let's define them as corrections, which is a 10% fall in our markets from previous highs, or bear market, which is a 20% fall from previous highs. If we're fearful of a bear market around the corner, it's going to make us less likely to invest in equities. Now, we go with the approach with our existing clients that you have an asset allocation. Let's, for example, say you're a 65% equity, 35% bond or bond replacement type investor, that if you come up on $100,000 that you don't need, that's going to be invested at a 65% clip into the equity markets, and 35% no different than if we were at the bottom of a bear market or nearing the bottom of a bear market. We would place that in the same exact way. Having said that, it is difficult. If someone has a CD, and this is the kind of the world that we're living in right now, I have a CD that matured and I don't need the money, or I have some type of certificate or a time deposit that has matured what to do with it. What should I do with it now? Well, there's a lot of different strategies. You can throw it in on that 65-35. You could easily do that. We could, depending on the investor, we could throw the 35% in on the bond or cash side that we would do anyway, and then dollar cost average into the 65% side and do that slowly. So we're going to be a little bit more conservative at the onset. But you do have that. I think when markets are high, when we start using the words frothy and skinny top and bubbles, when we start using those words, it is the most difficult time to invest, because you're right, that is coming. We don't know if it's tomorrow or if it's 6 years from now. However, when we look at what's the worst thing that can happen, and I do like to look at what's the worst thing that can happen from that standpoint. When you look at the worst thing that can happen today, if you put money in and we hit a correction or we hit a bear market, the worst thing that can happen is you fall in lockstep with it. And eventually, as you alluded to, eventually we know that will recover. We don't know how long it will take, but we know that it will recover. Well, let's flip it around and say that we did it and we just sat on this cash and our markets continue to go up another 20%. That's the other side of the coin. So we sat on the cash, we didn't invest it, markets go up another 20%, and I didn't participate. And now we experienced a crash. Well, what I've just done was I've locked in my mind, in our minds here, we've just locked in a 20% loss that we'll never be able to get back. We do not have the opportunity to get that back. So instead of that 100,000 jumping up 20% or whatever portion would be on the equity side, it is now still sitting at 100,000 because I was fearful, and I can't go back and repair that. Whereas if I would have put that money in the market and it fell 20% the next day and everybody was mad at Financial Phil because he suggested that I do it, we know that if you hang around, that money's going to recover and you'll get that piece of your portfolio back. So on the worst thing that can happen standpoint, it's actually more risky to sit on the cash than it is to go in at your regular asset allocation from a long-standing point of view. Now, if you've got something coming up, we always say this. I had someone ask me yesterday, I'm sitting on some money, I don't plan on using it. And I said, you don't plan on using it? He goes, no, never. That was his answer. But I dug more. I dug deeper. And I said, so you don't plan on using this for your life? And this kid he's 21 years old or so. I said, you don't plan on using this ever? Like in retirement or anything? He goes, no. 5, 6, 7 years maybe when it's time for me to buy a home, that's when I would use it. Well, that was a very important, clarify what you mean by you don't plan on using it in the future, that you do plan on using it. So that will dictate that is now your timeline. This is in your mind. Now you can use it for something else, but your timeline is now that 6, 7 years, and you can go ahead and jump in feet first with what you're trying to do because you have plenty of time for recovery if that market happens to fall just after you invested it. Whereas if that same person sits on that small amount he has, but the 10, 15,000, if he sits on it waiting for that crash, he may miss out on another 20% gain that he won't have time to. He won't have the ability to make that up. So, but this is a very difficult time to say, hey, I've got cash that wasn't invested. What do I do with it? Most difficult time for us to answer is periods like right now where we're at or near all-time highs.
Phil, I'm on group cyber currency and the AI. Cybersecurity, cyber currency, and AI all in one group. It's been viewed as a Wild West show by a lot of folks. A lot of investment, a lot of vacillation on values, and with few regulations. I was at a dinner party the other night with someone very, very, very knowledgeable. Her position is it's really too early to get to try to stymie either one of these by an excessive amount of regulation. Two questions. One, do you agree with the timing? And second, should these be regulated in some level?
I think, and when I make this statement, it's going to be directed more toward cryptocurrency. I think that was part of this discussion.
Yeah.
I do think that the cryptocurrency, and this is directed at that, there's regulation coming. and I think that regulation is going to come based off of popularity. And my longstanding belief has always been when cryptocurrency interrupts our government's ability to control the value of our money and to control the economy. Because that's what they do. We talk about the Federal Reserve and the value of the dollar and opposed to, other currencies and so forth. Our government has the ability to impact that. The Federal Reserve has a great deal of ability to impact our economy and our likelihood to spend money. If that gets interrupted by cryptocurrency and they no longer have that power, that's when I think the regulation is going to come, and it's going to come hard, and it's going to come fast. We saw that with cryptocurrency. We don't get into cryptocurrency a lot because it's not regulated, so therefore we can't recommend it. There's ways to get exposure to it, but direct cryptocurrency for us in this office in Martinsburg, we don't do it. However, we do recognize that it is a part of a lot of people's plan, a small part, and we recognize the great deal of money that people are making and losing in cryptocurrency. Our fear is, if we rewind back, and I don't remember how long ago it was, but China put a great deal of regulation on cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin went from in the 60,000s all the way down to 19,000 really, really quickly. And there was no way to prepare for that. There was no talk of a skinny top or froth or looking at earnings or anything of that nature that would give us an indication that was on the horizon. It was nothing but regulation. Now, it has since recovered and then some, but I think that when China placed those regulations on cryptocurrency, it would be a good lesson for anyone that is placing large bets on cryptocurrency, that could happen, and it could happen quickly if it interrupts our ability to control our economy.
For the life of me, I do not understand how cryptocurrency is anything but a commodity. It's poker chips. It's fairy dust.
I don't either, John. And it's not that, while I do understand it, I have a hard time, because of my education, I have a hard time wrapping my head around how you value that. So, as I have been taught and how we have practiced, we can look at things and value those, and we can determine, and sometimes it's acceptable, it's fine. It's that this is trading at a multiple of its actual value. That's okay. Tesla's always done that. That's fine. That's okay. Doesn't mean that it's not a good investment. We just understand what its book value or its intrinsic value is, and I don't know how you come up with that with cryptocurrency, and that's kind of where my brain, maybe sound like an arrogant statement, but where my educated brain kind of stops and says, well, how can I put money in this that other than play money? How can I put money in this if I can't determine what its actual value is? As I buy a vehicle or a piece of furniture, or I can place a value on it. I can't do that with cryptocurrency, and that's kind of where my brain stops its understanding.
And they call it currency even though it has no value until it is reduced to greenbacks.
Until it's reduced to the dollar, yes, and that's another thing. It's like, well, is it going to replace the dollar? Oh, how can it replace actual greenback money? Because that's its only value is what someone would give you dollars for it. So someone with more knowledge in cryptocurrency would have to educate me on that and probably rewire my brain some for me to have a complete understanding of it.
I think we're getting into that time where you're supposed to tell us how to get in touch with you.
Are we there?
Sounds about right. We're down to the final minute, Phil.
We're down to the final minute.
I know, when we lost the opportunity to talk trash about Rob. He's not here. We could have talked about him all bad things for 20-some minutes, and we didn't do it. But if you want to talk bad about Rob or say bad things about Rob before he comes back, you could reach us at 304-263-4343 or stop by and see us with an appointment at 1270 Winchester Avenue, right here in Martinsburg.
Thank you, Phil. Have a good day.
Thanks, Phil. Always fun.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.